Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today was a huge day. I finally found the EC chart for my Fox Farm Big Grow hydroponic solution. Now I can finally find the optimal EC value for my plant and match it with the chart, which is huge when it comes to growing very good looking produce. So I'm ecstatic that I finally found this, because in my previous video I was talking about how I couldn't find it and all this stuff. And so I'm very excited that we have this chart that we can now kind of dig into and apply it to some of the plants that I'm growing in my Kratky hydroponic system I got behind me. So let's start from the top. Let me give you the definition of EC. It's actually short for electrical conductivity. It's the measurement of how well water conducts electricity, which tells you how much dissolved mineral nutrients are in the solution. So to keep it simple, the higher the EC, the more nutrients you need in the solution. And the lower the EC, the less nutrients you need in the solution. And that's really important when it comes to growing certain plants. Because when you are growing tomatoes, you need a lot more EC, because that fruiting and developing those large, big, red, juicy tomatoes, that takes a lot of nutrients. While if you're just growing lettuces, radishes, herbs and things like that, you don't need as much nutrient solution. And when you add too much nutrient solution, there's often negative side effects, like cracking, which we saw in my radishes, and some additional bubbling, which we saw in my butter crunch lettuce. So now that I know the EC of my nutrient solution, I can now use that and then apply it to whatever plant I'm growing in my system. So before we dig into the chart itself and how I can apply that chart to my lettuce and radishes that I'm growing at home, I just want to talk about how hydroponics works and the idea behind it. I like to compare hydroponics to taking vitamins as a human. With a human, you need X amount of vitamin C, X amount of B vitamins and things like that. So then you can know the allotted daily amount that you need as a human. Well, that's kind of the same for hydroponic plants. They need X amount of nitrogen, X amount of phosphorus, X amount of potassium, and all the other micronutrients like calcium and things like that. So you're basically giving your hydroponic plants those vitamins in a liquid solution form, and then they're absorbing it and growing at the ideal rate based on that. So, if you're a human and you have too much of a certain vitamin, sometimes it can be detrimental to your health. That's the same thing with hydroponic plants. If you give them too much of something, they end up, being worse. They don't end up being better. They either grow too fast or, like I said, grow irregularly. So now that we got that out of the way, we can kind of dig into this chart. And I'm telling you, this is now going to be a game changer for my hydroponic system. No more cracking, no more weird looking lettuce. I'm so excited. So let's dig into it. So by just looking at the chart, we got to find our nutrient solution that we use. And that's the Big Grow hydroponic solution. And that's that second row. So 1 teaspoon of that Big Grow hydroponic mix is equal to 1 to 1.2 EC. So if you look at the chart, you'll see that the EC actually keeps growing, even though you're adding the same or even less amount of nutrient solution as the weeks go on. So the EC is the amount of nutrients that are in the solution, not the amount of nutrients that the plant has absorbed. So if your plant doesn't absorb all the nutrients in the solution, then the EC is going to keep rising every time you add some. So with the Kratky system, you actually only need to pay attention to week 1 of this nutrient graph, because in my Kratky system, you're only adding nutrient solution once. And so that's the EC at the start. You're not adding more nutrient solution as you go, so the EC will never rise. It'll actually decrease, but that'll be all the nutrients that your plant needs to survive. That's why I only look at week 1. So if you're doing any other grow methods in Kratky, you will need to consult, weeks 2 onwards, because as you replenish the nutrient solution in your hydroponic system, you'll kind of run into these same issues. But with Kratky, we just focus on week 1. That's the ratio. That's how much EC is in the nutrient solution. So now that we've got that chart stuff out of the way, let's compare it to the plants that I'm growing, the butter crunch lettuce and the radishes. So we've got 1 teaspoon per gallon equals 1 EC. Let's just keep that simple. So 2 teaspoons would be 2 EC for our hydroponic solution. So then we'll look at what the EC is for butter crunch lettuce, and that's actually 1 EC. So in my previous videos, I was growing with 2 teaspoons per gallon of water, which means 2 EC, which means I had double the EC that I actually needed for my lettuce, which is kind of crazy. I thought that based off the label, I needed 2 teaspoons per gallon, but I really only need 1. That's a crazy saving. That means I can use half the nutrient solution to grow this butter crunch lettuce. And that's probably what caused the bumps in my lettuce and some of the weird kind of issues that were happening. And I'm starting to notice even on some of my future butter crunch lettuce that I'm getting some browning around the leaves as well. And I did 3 teaspoons per 2 gallons of water. So this is huge for me. I'm gonna be saving nutrient solution. I'm gonna be growing better butter crunch lettuce, all because of this chart that I found. It's a savior. So now that we kind of figured out the problem with my lettuce, let's transition to my radishes. And that's where things get a little hairy. So according to the internet, the EC needs to be 1.8 for radishes. That's almost double what it is for lettuce, which I thought was kind of crazy. I thought radishes were low feeder. And like I said in my previous video, I thought I was giving them too much nutrient solution, which was causing the cracking. So I still think I'm giving too much nutrients to my radishes, but according to the chart, that's not it. So I think in a future video, I'll just decrease the amount of light my radishes are exposed to, but keep the same amount of nutrient solution because that's what the chart says. And so I hope the chart is right. And I'm hoping this can be like the ultimate, like do what the chart says, always do what the chart says, but we'll see if that's actually true. So in my future video of planting radishes, I'm gonna keep the nutrient solution the same, but just decrease the amount of light that's exposed. Radishes are, more of a cooler weather crop. There's not as much sunlight that they're exposed to. So hopefully that'll help the cracking, but we'll see. Like I said, this channel is all about experimenting, see what works, what doesn't work, and kind of share it with you. But all I can say is I'm ecstatic that I found this chart. This is huge. I'm super excited. I'm so excited to be able to share it with you guys as well. So I hope you guys found this video informative. You learned something new, just like I did. I've got some beets growing back there. I've got some more butter crunch lettuce. So please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on those future videos. And plus I'm time lapsing them as well. So those are gonna be some pretty cool videos. I'm gonna start this series called Time Lapse Tuesday, where I'll post time lapses of these hydroponic plants being grown. So yeah, hit that subscribe button. And as always, happy growing.